Now, although Jesse's character doesn't show up a crazy amount throughout the main story of The Last of Us Part 2, he is honestly one of my favorite characters to play in No Return, and I would go as far as saying he is probably one of the better characters as well. So today we're going over the ultimate Jesse guide for No Return. Now, Jesse's playstyle is defined as resourceful, which is definitely one of the best ways you could put it. He starts off with the regular semi-auto pistol, but it does actually come with a silencer as well. And on top of that, you do start out with a pipe bomb too. In terms of his traits, they are that he gets 30% more currency plus unique items at the trading post. Those kind of go hand in hand. You're going to get more good stuff showing up, but it's obviously going to cost more, and therefore the 30% extra currency is going to come in very, very clutch when it comes to buying those really solid weapons. On top of that, you also get a silencer recipe as well as the pipe bomb recipe too, and the upgrade branch you get is called the Gorilla upgrade branch. Now, starting off with that upgrade branch, it is very, very helpful early on when it comes to your stealth, but then funnily enough, it actually kind of moves away from that and kind of plays towards more of an explosive playstyle later on, especially towards the bosses. So this upgrade path is definitely something you want to focus on. It's kind of got a bit of everything in that, like I said, it starts off with some stealth upgrades, but then actually helps a lot with the exact opposite of stealth in explosives. Now, in that upgrade path, the first upgrade you can do is the improved silencers upgrade. This is really great for staying in stealth a little bit longer and making use of your resources, as this upgrade actually gives the silencers 5 uses instead of 3 before they break. So you definitely want to be upgrading that as soon as you can. We all know how important stealth is when it comes to No Return and just The Last of Us in general. So having those longer lasting silencers is definitely very helpful. In terms of the later upgrades though, it is also very much worth trying to upgrade those as well. There is the 2 pipe bomb upgrades. These aren't probably quite as useful early on, but as you get closer to those later encounters and especially the boss fights, carrying 6 pipe bombs and just having a bigger explosive radius can be the difference between beating a boss or dying. So whether it's early on or whether you just kind of save this for towards those boss fights, it doesn't really matter, but definitely upgrade these at some point because they are going to come in very, very clutch. And so, like I said, the overall Gorilla upgrade branch in its entirety is very, very solid in terms of upgrading. Now, something else that is definitely worth upgrading, or I guess doing with Jesse, is the dead drops, seeing as, like I said, you get more unique items at the trading post. And if you guys can get some good weapons from the dead drops while also getting good weapons from the trading post, and like I said, keep in mind you've got that 30% extra currency as well, you're kind of doubling down on getting those better items. You might, for example, get 2 really good weapons from 1 encounter rather than some characters not getting any at all. If you didn't do the dead drop with, I don't know, Ali, for example, and then you go to the trading post and there's just a pistol, then you're obviously not going to get any good weapons. Whereas, like I said, with Jesse, sometimes you can do the dead drop, get like a flamethrower, and then you go to check out the trading post and there's like a double barrel shotgun or something like that. So the dead drops are absolutely worth it. They're worth it with every single character, but I feel like with Jesse, they do really help in just doubling down, and you kind of end up with just this crazy arsenal of a bunch of different weapons. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are enjoying the video so far and you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There is plenty more content coming on The Last of Us, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, touching back on the trading post, something that actually isn't said anywhere is that Jesse gets infinite rerolls in the trading post, which are definitely worth doing if there is nothing in there that really strikes you fancy, but you have a lot of currency to spend, which, like I said, is probably going to happen a fair amount because of that 30% extra currency. You want to pretty much just make the most of being able to reroll as many times as you want, as well as the fact that you get more unique items at the trading post. It isn't worth having all of that extra currency from the 30% extra that you get if you aren't able to spend it. So absolutely make the most of those infinite rerolls. With every other character, they can only reroll once, and then whatever shows up in that reroll, those are the only things you can buy until you have finished the next encounter, at which point it obviously resets again. But with Jesse, you can do this an infinite amount of times. Obviously, it does cost currency to do the reroll, so it's technically not infinite, but you guys know what I mean. You can do it essentially as many times as you want, provided you have the money, which with that 30% extra currency is going to happen quite a lot. So make the most of that. There has been times I've bought a really good weapon, I've still had a little bit of extra money left over, I've re-rolled it and I've found like a flamethrower or a double barrel shotgun that's fully upgraded or something. It is 100% worth it to do those re-rolls rather than just simply saving your currency, because with that extra 30% currency, you're going to make that back up in the next encounter anyway. So it's not like you need to really save your currency as much as you do with a lot of the other characters. Now, I touched on these a little bit earlier on, but the pipe bombs are absolutely overpowered, especially if you unlock that second upgrade where the explosive radius is even bigger. And so you absolutely want to be making the most of the pipe bombs. Not everyone can get these as easily as Jesse can, so you absolutely want to make the most of that. Now, if you guys can manage to find enemies grouped up together in modes like capture or holdout, for example, as you can see in this gameplay, there are times when you'll see a bunch of enemies all in the same area. And if you throw a pipe bomb in that vicinity, you are going to take out 3 or 4 enemies at once. And on top of that, they are actually relatively easy to craft as well. So it's not like you have to be really frugal with these and not use them at all. I will say you should be saving some for those later encounters, but like I said, if you see 3 or 4 enemies grouped up, it is probably more worth it to use a pipe bomb and take them out rather than having to use your bullets. But with that being said, it's also a really good idea to at least keep 1 or 2 pipe bombs for a genuine life or death situation where you absolutely need it against like a boss or I don't know, a bunch of clickers, for example. It is definitely worth keeping a few, but if you've got a huge collection of pipe bombs, absolutely make the most of them. Now, I did just touch on bosses, and what I will say about Jesse is that he is absolutely great when it comes to bosses. I think for me personally, he feels as though he is the best at the boss fights, and something that is very important for that is to start planning early. For example, I was actually stuck on the garage bloater for quite some time in No Return. All of the previous bosses before that, I managed to get them in either the first attempt or the second attempt at the very latest. But with the garage bloater, I seem to have died like 3 or 4 times fighting that bloater, mostly just because of all the other enemies that come after you as well. And so in this run, when I was playing as Jesse, I really planned for that from the very beginning. I was trying to keep everything that I could. Like I just said, obviously when you can use pipe bombs, it's worth doing that. But I was also trying to save a few of them. I was saving like all of my ammo for the flamethrower, all that kind of thing. And by that boss fight, I had, I think like 6 or 7 different weapons, all with almost full ammo. I had a bunch of trap mines, I had a bunch of pipe bombs, and it made that fight so much easier than it had been before. And that was purely down to me just planning that out and going, all right, I need all the like explosives and stuff that I can get for that bloater. So let me save all of that, be a little bit more frugal through the other encounters. And in the end, that was essentially the reason that I actually managed to get past the garage bloater. So he is very, very good with the bosses, but it does come with a little bit of planning. So make sure to just keep in mind, don't use everything at your disposal. Even though I just said about the pipe bombs being really good for groups, you don't want to just throw them at one enemy, for example. So definitely plan for those bosses, because if you do make it to the boss and you are playing as Jesse with a bunch of different weapons and stuff, I'm pretty confident you guys will dominate most of those boss fights. Now, the only downside, in my opinion, when it comes to playing as Jesse is that he does struggle a little bit when it comes to the hand-to-hand combat, especially against clickers, as he just spawns with no melee weapon, unlike a lot of the other characters who will start with a knife or shivs, for example. And so it does make him a little bit weaker against the clickers, or realistically just anything that can one-hit kill you, because like I said, with those other characters, you can sneak up on a clicker and take them out straight away. If you don't have anything to do that with Jesse, though, you actually cannot technically kill them unless you are using bullets. So I do feel as though he struggles just a little bit with hand-to-hand combat. He's definitely not, drastically worse than everyone else. Everyone has relatively similar combat stats when it comes to the hand-to-hand combat. Even the characters with a knife, for example, I believe it still takes the same amount of hits as it does just punching. It's mostly just against those clickers. And with that being said too, if you just look around the map for some sort of like an axe or just any of those melee weapons, a baseball bat or whatever, then that can obviously help a lot against clickers. But just be aware that when you spawn in, if your first round is against infected and there are clickers, that can be very difficult. So make sure to plan accordingly. But anyway, guys, that is it for some of the best tips and tricks when it comes to playing as Jesse. I'm keen to hear any other tips that you guys have for him as well, so be sure to leave them down in the comment section. And there are a bunch of other guides going up for all the other characters. I've already covered about 4 or so as of this video going live, so be sure to go and check those out as well. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.